Welcome back to Doom 2. So today we are going to talk about map 14, The Inmost Dens by American McGee, and also map 15, The Industrial Zone by John Romero. Sorry about all the shifting of windows. It's always like I always have this kind of unwieldy setup for playing this, and I'm not used to playing these or any Doom levels in Chocolate Doom. So playing it in like a window so it's the right resolution and all that, it's interesting, but it's fine. Okay, so this is The Inmost Dens by American McGee. Probably, if I had to say, I think this is probably the most influential map in Doom 2, specifically because it has a lot of the things that I talked about with the earlier American McGee levels in Doom 2, but it is more polished. It's a bit more difficult because it's midway through the game, and it's the only American McGee map that's in the second episode, and he only has one in episode 3 as well, so but that one is not as memorable as this one. This one, it's very brown still, but and it is very square, but it is very detailed. There's a lot of like work that's gone into the detailing, and honestly, the reason why I say it's been so influential is a few reasons. First of all, I'd say a lot of modern maps, especially like I guess it started around this set called Alien Vendetta, which was one of the first Doom, or at least one of the first Doom megawads that I played. And there is a level in it, I think it's called Crimson something or other, but that is pretty much just an exact takeoff on this. And actually in the April Agitation thread, Linguisa wrote that in 1995, when designer Tom Mustaine was visiting the id offices to submit a map inspired by this map for the Doom 2 Master Levels compilation, apparently American McGee played that level for like 2 minutes and turned to him and he's like, go make some of your own geometry. So yes, this map has been really influential, I think, because the layouts are... It's still pretty square. It's like easy layouts to come up with, but there's a lot of like detailing and stuff to make it sort of come off more interesting, and I hesitate to say more realistic, but like there's a certain way that it's structured that is a little bit easier to come up with on your own. And I guess also the other thing that I would say is his use of chain gunners. He puts chain gunners like everywhere on ledges as like snipers here. And it's done in like other maps too, but like this one, it's particularly noticeable, and that's something that like so many modern map designers do. Here, I would say this map is pretty small. It's basically exactly the right size that it needs to be. And I think I was pleasantly surprised because I had played, some relatively modern Doom megawad right before this, so I was expecting like, oh no, it's going to get really difficult, and I'm not going to be able to see anything because I'm playing low resolution, and I'm not going to be able to control, and then it made me realize, oh, well, these maps are actually well balanced. This wasn't too bad at all, and it was exactly as long as it needed to be. I don't think this applies to like... This is an interesting contrast actually to Downtown, because Downtown is like a big sloppy map. Here you can see some of the details with those like windows. There's one that's like really detailed at the end, and apparently it's so detailed for the original engine that it caused like problems with save games, which is kind of interesting. I also saw that there are no official secrets in this level, which I don't really know why. It is kind of neat. I mean, it was a huge relief to me because looking for secrets for these videos, like I never find all the secrets, but I'm like been trying to, so that always gives me anxiety, but I didn't have to do it here. But there are secrets in this map. They're just not marked as official secrets for some reason, and you'll see me find a couple of things which, you know, pretty obviously seem to be secrets. I like the little jumping between sections in this level, like the fact that you have to jump out the window of a building to go to the ledge to the other side. I think there's ideas here that you know, we would see in like the waste tunnels in map 5, but they're expanded upon more. This really seems like his comfort zone as a designer. It kind of has this gothic feeling, and it's kind of square and pretty brutalist, but the it feels very of itself. It feels very like it knows what it is, and it's not trying to be anything more than that, which is pretty much the exact opposite of what like the Sandy Petersen maps are. I'm not supposed to be able to make that jump. I'm pretty sure that's like an SR30 or something. Yeah. But yeah, this map is notably restrained compared to pretty much any of the other city maps. And it's also like, I think upon playing the factory again, I actually liked that map more, but I'm not like a huge fan of the factory and downtown, the two maps before this, but this map is a lot better. I mean, it's a little bit, it doesn't, I guess it doesn't have the highs, I guess you could say, but it feels more like it comes from, like a lot of the American McGee maps in episode 1 feel like they're building up to something, and this map is part of that too. Like, it feels like it's from something. It feels like it has an identity and a progression that it's leading you towards, and that is of course not true with any of the Sandy Petersen maps. So yeah, and here we see the arch file. This is a good use of the arch file, like because he takes you by surprise, and I don't think that we've seen the arch file other than in Circle of Death. And there he was in a very like controlled kind of situation. And here this is like pretty scary for, I mean, compared to modern maps not so much, but it's pretty scary for anyone getting up to this point. And it makes sense because it's right when you enter the key door. Like, there's nothing really unexpected in this map, so I don't see it as being like exciting necessarily. It doesn't stand out outside of the context of Doom 2 necessarily, or at least like a lot of the ways that I think about Doom 2 maps is like coming to maps individually and being like, oh, that one's cool, or taking pieces and parts. But because this is more, you know, of an entire piece, it's not really that kind of experience. But I think it's one of those things again that makes you feel like the rest of the game is going to build to something that is related to this, but this is pretty much a one-off. Even his other map in episode 3 is not really anything like this. It's actually a really weird map, and very short for some reason. Yeah, here's a little secret, I guess you could call it. It's not marked as a secret, but I like those bars. They're so messed up. Actually, I have some problem with the bars later. Like there's some secret type thing involving a crushing ceiling later, and it got all messed up. You'll see it in a second. But it makes me wonder if like this is because I'm playing at like not the most current version of Doom 2. I'm playing on version 1.66 instead of 1.9. Or it really just was kind of broken. It's hard for me to get a sense of that kind of thing, because those sort of quirks don't usually come up when you play Doom 2 maps on Z-Doom, or, you know, GZ Doom or something like that, because they have a lot of that stuff fixed. Just in general, like Z-Doom is kind of its own engine. So there's behaviors that emulate the original, but they're, you know, it's intentionally like fixed or changed a lot of the problems in ways that maybe annoys purists. But, you know, that's what it is. That's what it's about. So yeah, that was the key area. There's those chain gunner snipers in the, I guess you can go up those lifts. It's very symmetrical too, which is a thing that John Romero doesn't like at all. I think the symmetry works here. The the fact that you can just access all of those chain gunner platforms is nice, because oftentimes they make that not, not accessible. Here's this thing with the crushing ceiling that I was talking about. Yeah, I think that's one of John Romero's actually design rules, is that if you kill an enemy and they drop something, you should be able to access it, but that's not always followed, even in the original maps, but especially in, like, fan maps, PWADs, community maps. So it's nice that you can actually do that, and, like, I don't know, I think the problem, one of the many problems with a lot of modern maps, just in general, I mean, this is like the Mario Maker level problem too, is that they just make it unnecessarily mean. Like, there's no real reason why you would need to, like, individually use lifts to access the chain gunners, but it's just nice, and it makes you feel more like you're in control of the map, and there's no reason to make you feel like you're not in control in that situation, because you're just picking up, like, it doesn't make the encounters any less, like, scary or anything. But that's not a thing that, sometimes people will just do things and be like, I'm going to be challenging, and it just isn't interesting, or it isn't fun, or it just seems kind of mean-spirited, instead of being, like, challenging, but also in this, like, dialogue with the player where it's giving you, something to play with, and you feel like, okay, yeah, I got this area under control, now I'm going to go to this next area, etc., etc. So, yeah, I don't know. This is one of those maps where, again, like, it's almost hard to talk about, because one, it's influenced so much after it, and two, it is, like, it's so much what you would expect in every way. I like The Secret, though. And I guess this, like, this whole detailing on the wall sort of functions as this kind of, like, it's supposed to make you be like, oh, wow, this is really detailed and cool. It's kind of like a visual splendor thing, in the context of the rest of the maps here. 'Cause that is, like, very indulgent detail. But it's something like when I remember playing Alien Vendetta, I was like, they pretty much ripped that off. And, like, Alien Vendetta was one of the more well-regarded Doom 2 WADs too. So it shows you how derivative some ideas, even from the most, well-regarded Doom sets, can be sometimes. Okay, here we have the industrial zone, and this is map 15. This is the midpoint of Doom 2. And it's one of my favorite maps, honestly. This one's by John Romero, and I actually really liked playing it on the sort of low resolution, because it feels more kind of surreal, just seeing all these, like, zombie men wandering around these buildings. And hopefully I can articulate why I think this map works better than the other maps that are, by Sandy Peterson, that are city maps, particularly downtown, which this is the closest to. I like this. I can't even really call it a secret. But he heavily uses the zombie men here, which, I mean, makes sense. It's a city, right? Like, they would be wandering around. And downtown had this thing where, like, most of the enemies were around buildings, but then there was occasional enemies like arachnotrons that were just wandering around. And it's like, it's okay, but it's kind of annoying because they can shoot you really fast or whatever. Whereas here it's like these big brutalist structures where they're just these tiny guys that are plinking away at your health, and you can't get all of them, so you kind of have to take cover behind the buildings. And the structures look really sort of imposing. It feels really big, especially in this, like, low res sort of setting. I don't know. I think this isn't necessarily even one of Romero's most well-regarded maps, because it's not in his, like, it doesn't necessarily follow his quote-unquote style as strongly. It's like more of a divergence, but I think that's what makes it good. But the interesting thing also about this map is there's sort of two sections. There's this city-ish part here, and then there's the part where you cross the lava moat, and then that's its kind of its own section. So it's kind of using the hub, the sandbox style design, but then it's also a little bit more linear with it, and it gives the level a little bit more of a sense of progression. There's also some cool secrets that involve running between buildings and stuff like that, which are in downtown as well, but I think are sometimes more choreographed in a better way by Romero. There's one really good secret that leads to the secret exit, which is going to take me forever to find. And it's funny because I found it the first time that I played this map unintentionally. I found the secret map without even secret exit without even intending to find it. But when I was looking for it this time, I couldn't find it. It took forever. And it's one of those things that I think, like, when I was playing the game, for the first time, I was being more inquisitive. I was saying, like, okay, what can I do with this? Oh, this looks like this might be possible. And it almost seems like it shouldn't be possible, but then it is, and I'm like, oh, cool, I just found this thing. It almost feels like I've cheated, but it's still, like, it makes me feel like, it's like solving a puzzle. It makes me feel like I was smart. But I think this time I was like, oh, there's probably a teleport or something that goes there, and I'm not supposed to do this. So I didn't, go that way, because I'm like, oh, there's probably another way to get there. That's why I think it's like my favorite kind of game design is where one that allows you to ask questions and be like, be more inquisitive and not be thinking about, oh, what does the designer want me to do here, but be thinking about, oh, what can I do? And I think that shows, like, just that Romero was thinking about that, and that giving you that feeling that you're almost breaking things is this, like, really nice feeling of freedom that, like, is so hard to provide, but it makes the experience feel much more authentic. Because, like, when you're exploring the wilderness in real life or something, and you find something, you come upon something, you feel really, or like, I don't know, you manage to do something really cool, you feel, or really smart, like, via deduction in the real world, it makes you feel, like, really cool. And so this is the kind of thing that, how do you, like, simulate that with these levels that are very structured? And obviously it's, like, built into the level to make you feel like, okay, I'm not supposed to go there, but then when you go there and you find the thing, it feels like, like, okay, what else is possible now? And that's always a great feeling to have. It makes you feel, like, more engaged with the experience rather than just trudging through and being like, okay, this is not what the game wants me to do. Because what the game wants you to do is kind of so arbitrary and invented anyway. Like, what is the point of that? I mean, it depends on the context of the game too, but I feel like that's oftentimes, people play a lot of games in sort of a zombified state to be like, okay, there's inherent things that are possible and inherent things that are impossible, and you can never sort of cross that barrier in the game. So whenever that barrier is, like, broken through by something, even if it's, like, a little thing, I mean, I like it when it's bigger, but whenever you break through that barrier, it feels really almost profound in a way. And it feels like the game is also trusting you to, like, it's like being a parent or something. Like, you can set boundaries, but after a certain point you have to let your children break them in order to move on. And I think that's, like, I don't know, that's just something that, like, people seem to miss all the time. Okay, so here's, like, a central structure, which you go around the outside of, as far as I know. Yeah, Yeah, and then there's a key in the center and a couple secrets, and I would say this is probably the like least interesting part because it's kind of symmetrical, but it's okay. It's like it's leading up to something, you know. And also like there's a lot of height, there's a lot of climbing and going down, like which I think is true with the Sandy Peterson stuff, but in the Sandy Peterson maps, you're kind of just teleporting everywhere. You don't really, there's no inherent relationship between one place or another. It feels just very random. Whereas here, you know, it is very clearly like, okay, I'm gonna walk over there and take up that lift, or you know, I'm gonna walk over here and go on this lift. It's like the spatial relationship between things is pretty clear, and sometimes things will teleport you randomly, but it's not like the thing with the Sandy Peterson map where it'll teleport you just halfway across the map. Like the location of the teleport basically makes sense. Yeah, this is a required thing too, but to get the yellow key, I think anyway. God, I don't actually know what the like normal intended progression of the map is and what is and isn't required, because you know, my intent is to go to the secret exit just in general. And the secret maps aren't even that great. They're pretty shitty, to be honest, but it's just cool to say that you got to the secret map. I'm going to read what Linguisa has to say about this. He says, Industrial Zone is one of those maps that I always forget was a John Romero creation. And he says that he pulls off the sandbox style spectacularly. Map 15 is a haven for all the flavors of former human, which makes perfect sense since it's so wide open. By pinning the player down by sergeant and chain gunner fire, Romero ensures that the pace is deliberate and that the player doesn't have carte blanche from the very beginning to just run across the whole level. It's full of memorable architecture, most notably the large industrial building looming above the blood pit, which is this one. This, like, I love the castle walls crenellation, whatever you call that, in that like green brick texture, that slimy. It's a kind of an interesting combination of gothic and industrial. It's an interesting yeah, just the theme of this map is more interesting too. Like downtown is literally just your downtown. But here there's like a setting and a mood that is implied by, yeah, okay, this is what you needed the yellow key for. Here there's a setting and a mood that's implied by where you're going. Okay, so this is the place where you eventually go to the secret exit from, but this video, I'm just gonna take forever to find it, and I apologize. It's just so stupid that, like, I should, like, really, like, at least play these levels on, like, with cheats on, just so I can find the secret first, and then come back and play them normally again. But, of course, I didn't do that. So, and it'd been a really, really long time since I played through all of this map. So yeah, that's my excuse anyway. It does give you the computer map here, which is important for finding the secret, because then you can see, like, oh, okay, there's an area extending out here. How do I unlock that? You know, there's another area extending out here. Yeah, so here you're going in these little tunnels. And the setting of this area is quite distinctive and quite different, which I like. And it's not just randomly different, like some of those Sandy Peterson maps where you're going in one area and then you're going into another area. And yeah, that slime brick texture is so good. I actually encountered it being used in like a Wolfenstein 3D mod at some point. There's a secret right here that actually I didn't unlock, but you can't actually access it because the platform, it basically, you activate something and there's a teleporter that comes up here, but you can't actually access the teleporter because he made a mapping, Romero made a mapping error, and it's like too many units too high. So this map was like impossible to 100% for a really long time. That's right where I was standing. But just recently, somebody found out how to like lure a pain elemental. This is where you access the other secret that I come back to later because I can't figure out shit. But I always love it when they let you go behind. Like, you wouldn't necessarily think that you could go behind those castle wall area, but you can here. And it gives a, you know, real sense of spatial relationship, and it makes you feel like you completed part of, you know, what you saw earlier, rather than it's just like this abstract set piece that you don't get to actually go inside of. Yeah, that arrow tells you, I guess, where to get one of the keys that you end up needing. What was I saying? Oh yeah, but the secret, but just recently somebody else figured out how to lure a pain elemental to launch you up into that platform and actually get that secret. So Doom 2 just recently, like this year, has finally been 100%ed officially because of people couldn't figure out how to get the erroneous secret in this map, which is pretty funny to me. So I'm gonna go, yeah, that's the area that I'm trying to get to with that that platform there, and it's gonna take me forever to figure out how exactly I need to get there. But in the meantime, I'm gonna go to the other area, and this is where the normal exit for the map is. Yeah, and it's kind of an interesting area. It's actually very intense. This is probably the most intense area of Doom 2 so far, just because there's so much like happening right when you open this door. It kind of makes me think of like some of the maps, and maybe this actually makes me think of Doom 1 Episode 2 Map 5. This like this wood abstract sort of wood panel area, but you're really stepping into like this sort of multifaceted, multi-tiered confrontation here. And I guess it makes sense because Industrial Zone is sort of the midpoint of Doom 2, and I always thought of it as being kind of like the end of the first chapter, like really kind of signaling an end of one part of Doom into the next. And I don't know whether this is like intentionally true or not, but because this is the way that I've always perceived it, that like map 15 is always kind of like relied on to be like a particularly good map because it's the midway point, and it's also where you access the secret level from. And it's oftentimes my favorite point in a lot of Doom 2 Megawads too, is around map 15. And I think it's because the game usually starts out like a little too simple, and then by the time it gets to like the what are often like hell episodes at the end, things often get like very, very difficult. And in modern like sets, it's often like this very slaughter based combat. It's different in Doom 2, of course, but I always see like map 15 and around that area as being like the perfect scale of a map. I think this is a perfect size of a map because it does feel like an adventure. There's a lot of different pieces and parts to it. It's kind of complicated, it's pretty tricky, but at the same time, it doesn't like, you know, like it's navigable. This exit area is really tricky because there's all these lifts that go up and down that are kind of activated when you're walking over them. And there's several secrets, but then I don't actually know what you need to do to get to the exit here. Like, I was very confused by this because you can't just open this door, or at least I couldn't. Perhaps I needed to pick up a key. I think maybe I needed to pick up... Oh yeah, I needed the blue key. Okay, I just fucked up and didn't pick up the blue key in the previous area, and that's what happened. That's what the arrow was pointing to in that like slime brick area. But yeah, there's just so many like sort of like passageways and different things going on with this map. There's several different themes here. There's like the industrial sewage or lava sewage brick area. There's the city part at the beginning and the different buildings, and then there's this area which is kind of like unveiling different like little structures, and there's all these little secrets and pieces and parts that go out from it, and it has a completely different theme. I like how seamlessly it sort of transitions from one thing to another without it feeling like it doesn't feel forced. Like it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel random. It doesn't feel like you're just randomly going from one place to another. And I feel very embarrassed that I died there because I hadn't died yet. Yeah, I struggle to describe exactly. I think it's just that there's so much going on with this map. And that's really why it's one of my favorite maps in Doom 2. Probably my favorite John Romero map. And I guess the reason why maybe it's not viewed as like his best is because maybe it's not the most distinctively in his style or something. And it is like, you know, doesn't have as elegant of a progression or whatever, but I like that he's combining some of the, you know, slightly more elegant layout of something like Circle of Death or The Living End or Abandoned Mines with something a little bit more sprawling, because it's I don't know, I think balance is always a really thing that I like try and strive for, and I believe in. Like, I always want a lot of different kinds of things and a lot of kind of different pieces that are in balance with each other, and oftentimes in Doom 2 it feels like you get one or the other. You know, you get like something sprawling that doesn't really cohere, or you get something that's very coherent like the Inmost Dens, but is kind of, it's almost boring because it like does its job well. It's like boring to talk about. But this map, there is like this like cool secret here with the megasphere where you have to run between all these areas. That's really cool. Like all these random lifts, all this tricky stuff that you don't expect to be in a map like this. I really like that. It doesn't really give itself away as being a particular thing necessarily, and you don't know exactly what to expect. There's just, I think the first time I played this, of course I didn't know who designed what map, but I think this map really stood out for that reason. And I think, you know, when I was talking about like Doom 2 WODs being oftentimes pretty derivative, I think people have picked up on that, and oftentimes map 15 is, you know, one of the more memorable maps in a set. Yeah, here's a nice little secret. This is not related to accessing the secret level at all, even though there's a similar area. You can see all these like areas in gray on the map. Those are the places that I'm going to need to go. This just sends you out here, which is actually not a good place to be sent to at all. Yeah. Not a good place to be sent to. Yeah, and you notice that like there's so many different variations of like damaging floors. Here it's like a lava rock thing. It's not any kind of like sludge. It's not like, you know, the mud or the lava or the blood or the, you know, it's like this kind of hot rocks, which I guess have been heated up by the industrial thing. Like, and there are torches, but then there are also these like sacrificed looking animals things here. So the combination of like gothic and industrial is kind of weird, but it's not something that like it feels very non-standard. It's not something that you would like just easily come up with. Maybe that's also why I don't feel like this map has ever been imitated effectively. There, like Circle of Death, I played plenty of maps that feel like that map, or The Living End, or whatever, but I don't really feel like I played any map that feels quite like this map, quite like sort of having that like sprawling aspect to it, but also architecture that is a little bit more cohesive. I don't know. It's interesting. Oh god. I'm gonna like take forever to figure out stuff here. I'm so sorry. Basically what you need to do, and I pointed this out earlier, to access that where that suit is and that switch, you need to run down off of like the area with the castle walls, and you need to run straight. I kept trying to run at a diagonal, but when they designed this game, they didn't know about like SR30 and SR40, which are what happens when you like run at a diagonal, basically. So you're supposed to run straight, and actually it's completely designed for that because there's a platform there, and if you run at absolute top speed, you will hit like that little wall where the switch is, and you'll stop, and you'll be set exactly in that place. So it's actually really thoughtfully designed, because you think that you're taking a leap of faith, but then you get it exactly. You're like right there. And that's like, it feels so rewarding to get that secret, which is really important because it's like the secret to access the secret level. It's one of the most important secrets in Doom 2. So it does its job. I like this exit area. It's very small, but I like it whenever you like exit into a pile of waste or something, or like you walk into the sky instead of just like a teleporter or a switch. Just because it's like you kind of have to use your imagination. It's kind of surreal too. Like, I guess it's like a lava teleporter. It kind of messes with your head a little bit. I don't know. Yeah, the Sandy Peterson maps always tend to do that, like having exits look kind of weird, and I like that. Yeah, so the secret to get to unlock where you actually do the secret exit is there, which you unlock with that switch there that I need to run up to. But I'm taking forever to figure out how to get to it. This is one of those things where I feel like I maybe even should have recorded it again or something, just because it takes so long. Let's see. What else is there to say about this map? Yeah, well, this is the only Doom 2 map that has a secret exit. Kind of a shame. I like wish that they did a few more secret levels, and that the secret levels were better. There are definitely a few levels that you would consider being something that you would access via a secret, like Gotcha, which is coming later, or Tricks and Traps, or Barrels of Fun, which are also coming later. Those are all kind of interesting gimmick maps, but they're kind of non-standard feeling. It would work well as secret maps, but those are all part of the episode, which I guess is kind of interesting on its own right. But the actual secret maps that you have to play in this are just fucking... I don't know, I think at the time, maybe... the joke of what the secret maps are would be really funny and surprising to people, because they'd be like, oh, what the hell? Like, what the hell am I doing here? But it's kind of a one-note joke, and it's not funny after the year 1995. So, but that's id Software for you and Doom 2. Yeah, I was talking to somebody recently who was like a game industry person, and he said that he always perceived, like, he always had some misgivings about like id Software and Doom and all that stuff, because it felt very machismo to him, and it felt very kind of not particularly deep or complex or whatever. And I think like the context that I was coming at this game from was a little bit different, because I had played like Commander Keen and like Wolfenstein first, so I knew that they had done stuff that was like more sort of cartoony. Even like Dangerous Dave, which is like bloody, is still a little bit more cartoony. But I don't know, I never like perceived that as much, but I can sort of start to see that creeping in, especially as like Tom Hall left, because he was the more sort of quirky ideas, cartoony guy. I feel like I still get the sense that the culture of id sort of became more machismo-y, and I can feel it in Doom 2. I think Doom 2 is more of an action-y, sort of machismo-y sort of game. And like Quake in particular, definitely that sort of influence kind of takes over and becomes the dominant aesthetic. And I think, I don't know, not having something to balance that out. Like even Romero, who, you know, was kind of the central figure here, ended up leaving around the time of Quake, or after Quake, because Quake in some ways was just like a compromise. Like, I think he wanted to do something a little bit more interesting with the game, and they just made it another first-person shooter. And I think Doom 2 is kind of like they're already starting to tread water a little bit, or like losing their direction, but they're still, you know, running on enough fumes from Doom 1 to where there's still a lot of like good and interesting ideas going on in there. But yeah, I guess that's the misgivings that I had about doing these videos in the first place and talking about Doom 2, is I feel like it's kind of diminishing returns in a way, and while there are a lot of individual interesting levels to talk about, I don't get as excited talking about them. Like, I love this map in particular, but knowing that it kind of stands in the middle of, you know, a set of maps that I'm not as excited about, it's kind of, and that there wasn't like any sort of sense of cohesion here, it kind of bums me out. I don't know, something about Doom 2 just bums me out in general, which is weird because it has been like the biggest influence over, like, the Doom community is so much more influenced by Doom 2 than it is by Doom 1. And it is, like, I guess a better template for a lot of Doom games. I guess maybe because it had like a full commercial big box release before Doom 1 did, maybe more people played like the full game of Doom 2, so they got really invested in it, like, because if they got to the end, then, you know, it really felt like they were hardcore or whatever. There's just something about Doom 2 that feels like kind of empty to me. And I feel that with Quake as well. I mean, although there are parts of Quake 1 that I do genuinely like, it feels like a lot of the sort of colorful, creative ideas and variety are starting to kind of curdle a little bit. I don't know. Some people would disagree with me here. Some people would say that like Doom 2 is the height of that creativity because the maps are so varied and there's a lot of different things going on. Here, okay, that's what I was supposed to do. And you can see the wall like blocks you there perfectly. It's a perfectly designed secret. I just was being stupid. That's one thing where, like, you know, modern game design, they might be like, oh, that's too obscure for players. But if you actually take the leap of faith and go into it, then it feels really rewarding. It's just a matter of like trusting players that they're gonna, you know, be able to find that stuff. And of course, this is how to access a secret map. So, you know, it is what it is. By the way, I like that you can only access this side of, like, the one side of that moat by jumping from a building. There's no way to cross it. There's no bridges that get raised. I just like navigating by falling from a higher point vertically onto a lower point. It's always kind of a makes you feel like you're, I don't know, like you're cheating or something. Like you're not supposed to get to that other area, but you did. I think, I don't know, I just think I value that in design in general. Okay, this is gonna be fucking tedious, like, because I'm just like so bad managing my health in this map, and for some reason these like SS Wolfenstein guys kick my fucking ass, so I'm gonna like have to restart playing this level like over and over and over again, and it's so tedious. So maybe I'll talk about like Wolfenstein 3D or something. So I actually had a set of videos back when I first started this channel that was me playing through. So I was a huge Wolfenstein 3D fan growing up, and I think a lot of like Doom people take that game for granted. And I think the thing about Wolfenstein 3D is it's sort of it's treated as like definitely like a milestone, but most people don't particularly treat it as people treat it generally as a stepping stone between like, you know, one thing and Doom, and they treat Doom as like, you know, the thing where their ideas sort of really came to full fruition. And that's true in some ways, definitely. But there's like a weird atmosphere to Wolfenstein 3D. And it feels almost like they're mocking it here, because the SS guys make this like horrible sound, and like at the end of the next map you have to like kill Commander Keynes, because apparently Adrian Carmack didn't like that he had to like do Commander Keen things, which are like, those are the things about id Software that I liked. And like apparently John Romero has called the Wolfenstein 3D maps like the most brainless thing that he's ever done, which I don't know. I take that personally, I guess, because I do like those maps. I don't like the first episode of Wolfenstein 3D, which this is the first level of Wolfenstein 3D, which is pretty well designed, I guess you could say. It's kind of comparable to the first level of Doom 1 in that there's a lot of different sorts of areas that you go into, a lot of different textures. It's sort of taking you on a little journey that's going to give you a preview of what is about to come. But the first episode of Wolfenstein 3D is boring. It's like big, sort of mazy levels. They're kind of bland. It's like this castle setting. It's clear that like they were going through different design ideas at the time, and they hadn't settled on something with the first episode. But almost all the other episodes, especially like episode 6 is kind of ridiculous, but episode 2, 3, 4, and 5 I think are all really good. And they all do different things, and they were all made in a really short period of time. There's so many different ideas going on with the Wolfenstein 3D maps, and it was also easy for me as a kid to get into designing Wolfenstein maps. Like, it's just a simple grid, whereas Doom is more complicated. And you know, something like Half-Life, which I also explored, like trying to make maps from, it was just like, it wasn't so easy for me to just be able to plunk something down and then, you know, play it. But Wolfenstein 3D maps, it's really, really easy to do that. Some would say that there are less factors with those maps. You know, there's less sort of creative things that you can play with. But I think I liked that limitation. So I ended up making, being part of like the Wolfenstein 3D community when I was a kid. And I did like play Doom WODs and stuff, but I was really actually in the Wolfenstein 3D community and actually completed a Wolfenstein 3D map set called Chemical Warfare, which is like, I don't think it's like, you know, super famous or anything, but it's not, it's generally well regarded, I think. And I did it when I was like 13, 14. I was like, you know, it's like in 8th grade, 9th grade, just sort of starting to come to an age where I was starting to think about doing creative stuff and being more ambitious. And it was a lot of fun, and I took it like very, very seriously, which is kind of funny to me now, because like, you know, a lot of people are like, be like, who cares, you know, that you made a set of Wolfenstein maps? It's, you know, it's Wolfenstein 3D, but I took it so seriously. Like, I wanted to, like, prove myself. And it's, like, it's kind of, there are some, like, really cool ideas that I came up with that I'm still proud of, but then there are other things where I just copy-pasted from, like, areas from Wolfenstein, and then, like, you know, tried to like recontextualize them, and I thought that was like the most clever thing ever. By the way, I like that bug there. But yeah, I had a set of videos here where I did commentary where I was talking about those Wolfenstein levels, and I think it was like 5 or 6 years ago. and I never actually finished them. I'm not sure that I will actually go back and finish them. But it kind of makes me sad when I look back at it, because, I mean, at least I accomplished something. Like, I made Wolfenstein maps, but I just never, for some reason, like, at the time I tried to make Doom maps too, but I never got very far. I always had these, like, little sketches and stuff. I actually found them recently. Like, I didn't lose them, which I'm surprised by. I like the secret, by the way. It's the one thing in this map that, like, feels like, oh, wow, okay, I didn't expect that to happen. Yeah, I don't know, like, I was just a big fan of Wolfenstein, and I don't actually know who designed this map, by the way. I'm gonna look at that. Okay, it's designed by Sandy Peterson. Okay, that makes sense. I mean, it's basically just taking it's the thing that Sandy Peterson loves to do, which is take a layout by Tom Hall and then take credit for it. Anyway, yeah, I mean, the Wolfenstein map is by Tom Hall, but the variation is by Sandy Peterson, I guess. They did design these enemies to be kind of difficult, at least if you're not, like, you know, sort of getting cover. And they put them in, like, huge bunches. But yeah, I don't know. I never got into Doom mapping as much. I think, like, I couldn't conceptualize, like, the multiple sort of dimensions, like all the height differences and stuff. It's not actually, like, that much more complicated, but I think I was just overwhelmed by Doom, and I, like, couldn't conceptualize the spaces in my head as well. There was something just so straightforward and, like, easy to easy to comprehend about Wolfenstein 3D, so it made me, you know, more able to think about other things. But I really dispute the idea that, like, the Wolfenstein 3D levels were brainless. I don't think so at all. I think John Romero's Wolfenstein 3D levels are not always great. Like, his maps, his episode 5, he designed episode 5 in Wolfenstein 3D, and it's good. But episode 3, that he did most of, isn't. His maps are okay. They're not that great though. But the maps that are always, like, the star of the show in Wolf 3D are pretty much all by Tom Hall. And he made so many of those maps in such a short period of time. I really, like, recommend checking out Wolfenstein 3D if you can handle it. You know, it's like Doom 1, you can save anywhere, so play it on, like, Bring 'em On, or, you know, the normal difficulty mode. And skip episode 1 and then just play the rest. And you'll probably have a pretty fun time. It's a pretty fun game. This is how you access the secret map. It's the exact same way that you access the secret map from Wolfenstein 3D. Because the secret map of episode 1 you access via the exact same secret. So it's not really a surprise or anything. It is what it is, I guess. Yeah, and this is a send-up of, like, the boss level from episode 1, which is very memorable for a lot of people, just because it's this giant, like, hall space. Really all you do in the original is just fight the boss, and there's some secrets that give you, like, a lot of health, but it definitely surprised a lot of people who played the shareware version of Wolfenstein 3D, like, open the door and have the guy be like, hello. He says, the guy, like, the boss, he's like this giant boss holding, like, chain guns, and he's like, Guten Tag. Yeah, and this is the exact same place the secrets are in. I don't know, this is just so, like, obligatory. It's so silly. And it's hard to know if they're, like, making fun of Wolfenstein 3D or they have affection for it. Maybe it's too close in memory. Actually, the funny thing about Tom Hall and Wolfenstein 3D is he would end up working on a game called Rise of the Triad, which there's a video playthrough by this guy named Psychedelic Eyeball that's really, really good. It's from a while ago. It's like a Let's Play, but it's really good. It's definitely worth checking out. But yeah, Tom Hall ended up doing most of the levels for Rise of the Triad, Rise of the Triad was originally intended to be a sequel for Wolfenstein 3D, and it uses the Wolfenstein 3D engine, but it's like it was made after Doom, and it was like they do like all these weird tricks to make it not seem like Wolfenstein 3D. Like there's different varying level heights with the walls and all that kind of stuff. It's an interesting game. It's, you know, it's not as good as Doom or anything, but it's definitely worth checking out. A lot of first-person shooters from this era, not just Doom, are worth checking out, but, you know, I still like Doom, of course. Okay, so that was Gross, who's not even in the map, Hans Gross. That's the boss that says Guten Tag that you fight. But anyway, stay tuned. And I will be playing the suburbs and some other maps later on. So I hope you enjoyed this rambling ass commentary. And yeah, stay tuned for more videos in the future. Bye bye.